That ain't thunder. That's Logisticize rolling in. Headlights cut, small town night, dust flies up in the neon light. Hauling miles with a heavy load, pulling up on the gravel road. Steel toe boots on a wooden stage, a little rust and a rebel rage. From the back roads to the show, when the engine starts, you know. Feel that rumble in your chest, like a diesel hard out west. We're Logisticize, going loud and mean. Red dirt rebels on the gasoline train. Turn it up, let the tailgate drive. We don't slow down, we don't ever stop. From the back road straight to your soul. We came here just to lose control. If you're ready, let me hear you shout. Logisticize is rolling out. Six-string crying, a kick jump pound, booty heel stomping on southern ground. Cold drinks raised to the night's on fire, bringing heat like a flat-out tide. No GPS on a rebel route. We don't ask where we don't have doubt. If there's a stage and a wild crowd, crank it up and we play it loud. Feel that shake in the floor. That's the sound you waited for. We're Logisticize, rolling loud and mean. Red dirt rebels on the gasoline train. Turn it up, let the tailgate drive. We don't slow down, we don't ever stop. From the back row straight to your soul. We came here just to lose control. If you're ready, let me hear you shout. Logisticize is rolling out. Well, Logisticize coming in hot, full tank fire, give it all we got. Let it rip like a midnight ride, bringing thunder you can't deny. From the black top to your hometown bar tonight, we're taking it way too far. So throw 'em up, let the whole world shout. Logisticize is in the house. Welcome to Logisticize 104. Hosted by Doug Holbrook. Y'all ready? Let's ride.
Good afternoon, everyone out there. How are we doing today? We are here for episode 8 of the Logisticize 104. Blitz Week. I want to thank you guys very much for getting through Blitz Week. I sent a message out earlier, 3 days, and we had not one single violation turned into clean inspections. You guys, I can't keep saying it enough. It's definitely an elite performance you guys are putting on since the beginning of the year. It's been a great run. We should see our CSA points here coming down out of alert. Like I said, next 2 months, we're almost there. Every clean inspection you guys tack on there for us definitely is adding up and is drove our points down twice as fast. As promised, today in the studio, we do have Mr. Rick Plummer in here, and Brian's joining us as well. How are we doing today, guys?
Good. Doing well, thank you.
All right. Rick, one of the things we wanted to talk about today and bringing you in here is we want to hear, by popular demand, your journey from before you were ever in trucking, how you ended up there, all the way up through till, starting Logisticize, what your vision for the company is. And we're going to try to break this up in a few episodes here. Let's start out with, how did you get into trucking?
Well, let me back up a little bit.
Okay.
And one of the things I want to back up is to say, appreciate everybody listening into the podcast here. I know I was on the first one, and I think that one went platinum or something like that. It was pretty good. So everybody wants a copy of that. Continue to tune in, I guess, and we're going to have some special things coming on as we continue to go with this. So appreciate everybody doing that. And as Doug has alluded there, Blitz Week. Once again, you guys have done splendidly out there. Kudos to you guys. Kudos to the shop techs and everybody for watching it, making sure that things were taken care of. So, yeah, Doug, you kind of wanted to know a little bit about how I got into trucking. I think by most people's standard is probably by default. Really, it was you come out of high school and what are you going to do? I was in farming at the time and such, and like being around diesel, regular regular guy like that.
Was it the fumes that you like being around?
I think it was the smell of diesel in my hands.
There you
really
go.
what it was and such. And anyhow, my dad owned a company that needed trucks to haul product, and he had straight trucks and moved into semi trucks, and only one or two at the time. When my brother was driving one of the semi trucks, and so that's how we kind of got started into the trucking as far as a family. So.
So your father had a business already that he was running, and were you guys paying for other people to transport your stuff, and just decided it would be a good move for you guys to start?
Yeah, Dad, when excuse me, when Dad was first getting started himself, he drove truck back in the 50s and such. So it's always been in his blood. And then he bought this it was a seed company that we hauled corn seed, bean seed, and stuff like that around, and then progressed into the semis.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of how that started. So I've been around it, I'm going to say, most of my whole life on that. And, so then got graduated and needed a job, looked out there, and we started hauling grain from Payne, Ohio to Toledo on Old 24. And that was a 2-lane, not many Canadian trucks on it back then.
Did they even have 4-lane highways back then?
Yes, they had 4 lanes, yes. But when you got in on 4-lane back then, that was a big deal, man. You were like a high roller then or whatnot. But yeah, started out hauling grain to Toledo, back and forth there, fertilizer into the plant and such like that. Really enjoyed that. You got to remember that was back in 1980. So there wasn't that many semi trucks. Farmers had no semi trucks. So we would go to farmers' locations and fill up there, as well as the elevator. So there just wasn't many trucks on the road. All of us guys running back and forth to Toledo, you knew who each other was. Meet them on the road. Of course, you just had the CBs back then, but
back when they were actually used to communicate.
Exactly. Everybody spoke English on it.
Yes, that helps.
And such like that. So, started hauling back in there. A lot of good stories on hauling grain. A lot of the guys that are now retired and some have passed on were good friends of mine that were hauling grain, and you'd stop and help each other. You would, there was a camaraderie back then.
And what a culture change has been since then as well. I got into it in the early 2000s and none of that existed. I mean, you didn't hardly see anyone helping each other out. You get to a truck stop, see a guy struggle in the back end. Nobody would take 2 seconds to do that. I know it's kind of disappointing that happens, but is that one of the biggest changes you've seen from, the beginning of your career driving to, I mean, I know you don't drive a lot now, but you still do get out there and help us out hauling loads and retrieving equipment. Is that one of the biggest things that's changed over time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it really didn't matter who it was, what company. If a truck was broke down alongside the road, you would know about it because everybody was on CB. And if nobody had stopped, you would stop, see what you could do. Sometimes 2 or 3 drivers would stop and help the guy, at least get him up the road or whatever it was. Because you got to remember, we were on, like you said, 2 lanes back then. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't a whole lot of room. And the other thing is the patrols back then, great guys. They would help you in situations. They would, you would help them or whatnot. They would, it was just different as far as the rapport back and forth as far as on that. So, yeah, probably if you ask me, was the biggest change in trucking out there since I started back in the 80s. There ain't no food out there. I think everybody would raise their hand out there that's listening to us and say, there ain't no food, man. There's just not. Back then you would pull into a truck stop at 2 in the morning. You could either have the meatloaf from the night before, or you could have eggs for that day. And it was great. Now, was our cholesterol probably through the roof? Probably. But on the other hand,
You had a good, healthy meal too.
we had a hearty meal.
I was going to say,
It wasn't junk food
Yep.
or something like that. And typically back then you would sit at the counter to talk with the other drivers because you didn't really talk to anybody all day
Right.
long and such like that.
Well, yeah, there were no cell phones, so all you had was a CB, and
The CB,
unless Mama had one at home, she wasn't picking it up.
Yep.
So
yeah. And so, you go to the truck stops and you'd eat that. But one of the things was the trucks was much different. Okay.
oh, yeah.
I started out in a 1974 cab over International Transtar with a 290 horse taper nose crank, non-turbocharged, had a lift axle on it, truck.
wow.
And did it have air conditioning? Sometimes when it worked.
Mhm.
Did it have heat? All the time.
Sometimes when it worked.
All the
Yeah, 'cause
time,
you're sitting
except
on the
for in the
motor.
winter.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And you would wrap your legs in blankets to keep warm. And so
I would think in those cab overs, that motor sitting just to your right hip, it would warm you up pretty well.
in the summertime, it did. Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. As a matter of fact, you could. We used to buy sandwiches and put them on the shifter tower, and they would stay warm. They would stay warm and such like that. So, one of the things about the hearty meals, like you were saying, Brian, you were wore out
Mhm.
after a day of trucking. You were just plain wore out, and that, and I'm not old school like my dad or whatnot. I was in a transitional place probably when I started,
Okay.
as far as where trucking was and such. So, that's started because of a need of hauling grain, and that moved into the world of hauling steel out of Fort Wayne. As a matter of fact, I was 18 years old. I was leased on to Central Transport, which was owned by some people say they're mafia linked, but they own the Ambassador Bridge, is who owned Central Transport
Okay.
back then. And I was the youngest one ever hired on to that.
Wow.
And it was pulling flatbed. So we were their special division hauling flatbed, and had a trip one time where I had to go up in Canada and got up to the border, and the border patrol or whatever, like, oh, no, you're 18, 19 years old, whatever it is, this and that, your paperwork wasn't right and all that. And I called back to my dispatcher at the time, Eddie McCullough. I called back to Eddie, and Eddie says, "Give me a couple minutes." Typical dispatcher.
Yeah.
Set and wait.
Give me just a few.
Yeah. So all of a sudden, guard, or I'm talking maybe 20 minutes later, the border patrol comes out, hands me my paperwork. He says, "You're free to go. Go deliver your load in Canada and come right back out." And I didn't ask no questions. I
Straight
got
through
in
you
there,
go.
man.
Yeah.
I released the brakes. And I was
Absolutely.
gone. Went, delivered the load, called in, and said, "Hey, I'm up here. I've delivered." I'm like, "What'd you do?" He says, "Well, when you have the kind of pull that the people that own the bridge own the company." Yeah.
Okay.
Let
Okay.
me
Now
go
it's
out.
coming together.
And I said, "Hey," they told me I had to unload and come right back out. And they said, "Yeah, you're going to load coming back out here." I'm like, "Okay, you got me into this. You get me out." You didn't have passports back then. You didn't have none of that kind of stuff or whatnot. So yeah, started hauling steel for Central Transport. A lot of stuff out of Slater Steel going up into Minnesota. I took those runs. And we'd haul grain in the summer and then steel in the wintertime. And really enjoyed running up into Minnesota, even when it was February and such,
Mhm.
because there's nobody on the road. They didn't mess with you up there and
How-
such like that.
How far did you guys in the beginning stretch out? I mean, did you guys go out west a lot? Or
No,
okay,
no. Really, Florida used to deadhead from here down to Florida sometimes and pick up
wow.
watermelon in flatbeds with side kits.
Mm-hmm.
You'd sit out there in the field all day while they loaded you. Some interesting stories on that too. But
Boy, times have changed now. You deadhead out of Florida all the way
Right.
back here. You don't deadhead into Florida.
And for reference, what were the fuel prices back in the
Oh,
early
boy.
80s when you started?
I have no idea, but it was all cash. We would just pay cash.
Mhm.
No
And
cards, no accounts.
I don't think we had cards that I recall. I remember one time being up in New York, and of course, on the throughway up there, and I had to make a decision. Either I could pay to get off the toll road or eat. Well, I got off the toll road.
Ah.
So it's just one of those things. It was, it was cash. Everything was cash back then,
Well, they didn't have transponders. You couldn't pay later. They didn't send you stuff in the mail. It
Exactly.
was I could absolutely see that.
Exactly.
And I'm assuming the facilities probably, as you were traveling, were not as numerous. You didn't have truck stops at every other exit on the highways. Was it more of a challenge back then to find parking and find a place to go, or do you see that today it's more equipped, even with the struggles we have today?
I think if you talk to anybody that drove back in the 80s, I don't ever recall having a parking issue. Okay. But there was a lot of mom and pop truck stops.
Sure.
You would go to and such like that. And, they'd come out, wash your windows. They do stuff like that. So, I really don't recall ever having a parking issue. Not at all, but a lot of little places that did fuel and a lot of places that you could pull into to get a meal because it was a restaurant that had truck parking.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, don't forget our trailers were only 42 foot long,
Mm-hmm.
so it was maybe a little easier getting in and out back then and that. So
Definitely a different challenge then. Obviously, as the industry's evolved and we are where we are today with all of the regulations and electronic logs and such, what was the biggest challenge that you would have faced back then out on the road, outside of, yes, no cell phone and only being able to stop to call back? How difficult was it to find these shippers and receivers at times if you get out there and, oh, hey, this is my directions, and that you're nowhere near the place?
So one of the things was back then, you carried a lot of city maps,
Mm-hmm.
and you would, a lot of times you'd pull into a town or something like that, and there was a gas station there, or there was a truck stop up the road or something like that, and you could ask directions,
Right.
and they would get you to go. Rarely did you have a phone number or something like that, but everybody knew where Eaton Court was in,
Or US
Green
Steel
Bay
or
or something.
whatnot. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, and such like that. So the other thing was, when we got into hauling more structural steel, it was a pride thing that you would you'd look and you'd see if you saw a crane somewhere up in the air.
Yeah.
Pretty good chance that's where your steel was going.
Yep, where
And
you're headed.
So still to this day, I think GPS is a wonderful thing for the last 3 miles of the way. Okay, if you can't be a truck driver that can make it from here to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, without a map, it's pretty sad. Or without a GPS, that's pretty sad. Okay,
Oh, yeah.
because we got 3 interstates to get down there or whatever and stuff. You can't figure that out. Now, the last 3 miles of the way, GPS is wonderful. But I think a lot of people in today get themselves into trouble when they pull out of someplace and they rely totally on the GPS, and the GPS routes them goofy.
Right. It's a tool that has become a crutch, I believe, for our society as a whole. I dated a woman who lived in the Metro Detroit area, and she couldn't get around her own neighborhood without using her GPS.
Yeah.
And she would call me asking for directions, and I'd say, well, just take 90/40 your road and make a left and you go home. Well, it's having me go this way. Well, go the way I told you. You know, I'm not there with you, but this is the straightest shot, the easiest with the least amount of turns. She couldn't figure it out.
We know one of the things is back years ago, you would, if you were going from point A to point B and you saw a truck that was like on the side, you could see they were from that area.
Mhm.
You'd ask him, "Hey, I got to go over to this town. How would you get there?" And they'd tell you these county roads and these other roads that were a shortcut
Mhm.
that you would have never known.
No, yeah.
But we talked to each other about
Right.
how to do that. So, that GPS is wonderful, but like you said, Brian, it can somewhat be a crutch or whatnot. So
Yeah, I found myself sometimes relying on a little too much, and Google Maps has failed me here lately. That's for sure. Guys, real quick, I wanted to let you know to interrupt this a little bit. Yesterday, I did send out a message. Guys, keep in mind, they're keeping that bridge closed here in town for another 10 days. They're talking through the end of the month. We've caught several of our trucks on surface streets here in town. Guys, we got to keep them off of there. That's 2 tickets. Disobeying a traffic control device and being on a non-truck route. So I just seen another one that had traveled through, and I want to talk about that real quick. Outside of that, I guess, when you're traveling along back with no phones and things like that, when you would get your next load, how did your dispatcher let you know of any change? How would you know if, here all the time, our drivers sometimes get frustrated, and that's why I kind of brought it up that the plan changed. Well, yeah, there's a reason for it. How on earth would you guys even be able to communicate that back then?
well, very good point. One thing, the trucking company, when you hired a driver, you had a lot of trust in that driver. Okay, we used to like say give guys cash and say, "Here, go to Florida and back," and like you said, Doug, you could not get a hold of them. Okay, matter of fact, one a good example was how you laugh about these guys. They see him, Brian,
Mhm.
and it's like I go out to the lot and I go up to talk a guy, and he says something, and I say something back. "Oh, I'm talking to my wife." I'm like, what? He's like, "Yeah, he's on the headphone with his wife all day long."
Mhm.
And I'm like, what the world? Okay.
Mm.
What me and my wife, Denise, we had our thing that at 10 o'clock at night, didn't matter, where I was or whatnot. 10 o'clock at night, I would stop, I would call in. She had the kids in bed, usually by then. Wherever I was, that's where I stopped
Mhm.
and to call her. And that was our exchange of information for the day. Right.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Mhm.
And now my dispatch knew that it was 10 o'clock at night. So if there was something, they knew that I would be calling my wife. And therefore my wife was more connected with what was going on.
Right.
Okay. But as far as you go somewhere and you get a backhaul and the load changes, there was no communication, Doug. There really wasn't. I mean, back when I was hauling produce and such, we used to load out of Haines City, Florida, and you'd pick up all day long, and then they want you to truck all night. And it's like, okay, where's the load going? Well, get to Cincinnati and give us a call. So you get up to Cincinnati
You know, a
and you
check-in
call
point.
them, and they'd say, okay, it's going to Detroit, or it's going to Cleveland, or it's going to Pittsburgh, or it's going to Chicago. And so they were selling that load of produce while you were
As you were
trucking.
driving.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Wow.
So you didn't know where you were really going to end up,
Mm.
and so yeah, communications was definitely a challenge. But you know what? If you ask any of these older guys, it really wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, you
Well, you didn't know any different. I mean, you guys didn't know cell phone. I mean, you were just progressing through it. Yeah, exactly. So you were just
That
taking
was
care
the-
of it the best way you guys could.
yeah,
That was the normal.
Yeah.
that was the norm. There was a lot of you know, you didn't you know, you would go to a truck stop and there was a bank of 15, 20 phones on the wall,
Mhm.
and there was a load board up in the corner and up in the stockyard truck stops up in Minneapolis. Many a times um, on my run, I could make it and get emptied at like midnight. So the next morning at 8, I'm out there as soon as the load board came on, looking for me a load.
for your next
and
load.
for the next load and such like that. And then you'd get it booked, and you'd have to sometimes do paperwork. They call them trip leases back then. You take off and such. So it's and same thing there. There was no macro point back then. There was nothing. You know what I mean?
And they would probably pay you for the load once you made delivery also, wouldn't they?
Sometimes on a trip lease, if you went to another office, they would cut you a check that
Right
day
then and
and
there.
such like that. Yeah. But that was a very good question there, Doug, because the relationship with a dispatcher and the driver was even more involved than it is today.
So would you call your dispatcher once a day or once every couple days? How would that communication flow for your loads then?
So even as I got out of the truck and got into the office or whatnot, we had a call-in time. Okay, so everybody had to call in by 10 o'clock in the morning. Okay, between 8 and 10, you had to call in. Okay, let us know where you're at. A lot of guys were at the delivery already. So whenever you got to your delivery point, you would call and say, hey, I am here in Detroit, waiting to get unloaded. And then maybe they had your load information then. Maybe it was, hey, we don't have anything. When you get empty, give us a call back.
Right.
Hour later, you give them a call back.
Mm-hmm.
Lord willing, they had something for you and you could go somewhere and pick up. If not, you went to the Detroiter truck stop and usually you either saw somebody get robbed or something like that. I mean, it was just normal stuff.
Yeah.
It really was and such. So yeah, and then when you got loaded, you would call your dispatcher again and let them know. So you might talk to your dispatcher at noon and not talk to anybody until the next day. But like I said, for a lot of the guys back then, I always encourage them, hey, listen, establish a time that your wife and you can talk every day. And then if something is amiss, we can always get a hold of your wife and say, hey, you need to call Rick at night or something like this too. Yeah. We made it work.
Yeah.
We made it work.
So as you're coming, you said that you started when you were 18, of course, with Central Transport. Just kind of backpedal a little bit to that. What age were you when you met Denise?
Way too young. So it was 19 to 20, something like that. Yeah.
So it was shortly after you started driving.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. She came from it's kind of an interesting story. Her dad worked at General Motors in Defiance, and her family is very structured. They would eat supper every night at 4:30. Supper was on the table, and she started dating me. And a lot of times I would, Fort Jennings is where she's from, over there by Delphus. I'd haul beans. You could haul beans over there until 11 o'clock at night. So a lot of times I'd run a couple Toledos and then come back and turn a Delphus over there, Central Soya, and I'd swing up by her house, and it's 9:30 at night. I couldn't turn her load, so I'd pull in there to see her. And a lot of times her mom would say, are you hungry? I'm like, yeah, I haven't ate all day. She says, what do you mean? Well, yeah, I just haven't had time to eat all day. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's only a few drivers out there. Ackerman would be one of them, but my CB handle back then, any idea what it was?
I wouldn't have a. See, I figured Ackerman would have told me by now, but yeah, he hasn't told me.
Okay, all right. So my CB handle was slim. I was very, very thin back then. Very thin.
Very thin.
Yes, very thin. Thank you. Saying them right now, but anyhow.
No, I'm saying still are.
Yeah. So it was just kind of funny. Two worlds collided there. A very structured, world, and her world, and then here came my world to where it was like, what are you doing tomorrow? Oh, nothing. And I call her. She's like, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm in Memphis, Tennessee. What? How'd you get there? Well, they popped up a load late in the day and went. And, another thing to back up when we go to dispatch, loads were few and far between at several times during that early years and such. And you would basically sit at the shop and wait for the load or the phone to ring to get you a load. Mm-hmm. Okay. And there was, some guys said, well, I don't want to go to that place because it's on the north side of Cleveland. Me, I was broke and needed money.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't matter where the load went.
Right.
And once I learned this pretty quickly, that once the dispatcher knew that you would take the crap, they would also give you the good.
Yes.
Mhm.
But that guy that would sit there and I don't want to go there. It's Central Steel and Wire. It's off of Western Avenue downtown Chicago, and it's hard to back into. Dude, I took those all the time because I knew if I took that, okay, and didn't complain about it, I would get some of the Montgomery, Minnesota ones that were just beautiful runs.
Mhm.
And then these guys would complain about, well, I ain't getting no freight. Well, you ain't hauling no freight, stupid.
Mhm.
Yep.
I mean, that's just what it was.
And that's honestly why I was able to make the money I did at the job I spent the most time at. Is I would take the crappiest runs going down into the inner boroughs there in New York City, but my reward was I'd come out of there, come back across the bridge, and I'd have to bump 30 docks, which I got paid $35 for each of them. And that's what I would do the rest of my Monday and the first part of Tuesday. And I had the highest grossing wages for that company for 6 years. And I drove the least amount of miles because it was a crap load out there.
Right.
It was terrible to back into places, but the reward was I got to relax and just bounce from dock to dock in a port. Some guys wouldn't like that, but I was making more money doing that than I was driving around.
So one of the things that I mentioned Mike Ackerman there. You guys,
Mhm.
a lot of you guys know him. He's been around for forever. He was instrumental in me getting into trucking as well, and I kind of hold that against him.
That's where everything went wrong.
Yeah, okay,
Blame it on Uncle Mike.
Mike had I think it was a 1973 GMC cab over with a silver 92 Detroit motor in it and a 10-speed, and he would haul blocks out of Indianapolis to Detroit for Chrysler, and then you'd pick up paper, I think it was, up in Detroit and come back to Kokomo, Indiana. It's probably the run, actually.
Mhm.
Well, he tells, did he have to pick the blocks up and put them on the trailer? Because he tells us that's why he hunches when he walks now.
He lies. But anyhow, so that a lot of different people will help you in your career. I look back to many different people I could sit here and name that would help you along. And you saw how they did things. I'll back up. One of the things we talked about, people breaking down and such like that. One of it was professionalism and such like that. No, not everybody dressed. Back then, CF ran around Consolidated Freightways, and those guys would wear a tie the whole time. It's part of their okay.
I mean, there's a time Walmart drivers, I believe, had that type of uniform, even in the modern era.
Yeah, and so but back then, people dressed the job is what I'm going to say, and whatnot, and there was a professionalism to that as well, and that's kind of changed somewhat too.
Definitely,
And I'm not going to say it's just the culture has changed, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah, I think a little bit of the unfortunate part of that is some people not taking pride in what they do. I don't know, I'm not saying it's us as a fleet, but you can look out there just in general, people just don't take the pride they used to in the craft, whatever what they may have chose. It could be cooking our food each day at a restaurant, and it just doesn't seem to be there anymore.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that goes along with having a sense of community, like you were saying. People stopping to help each other. You don't see that anymore because people are afraid of getting shot or kidnapped.
You get sued now,
or whatever the case may be. There was an accident just yesterday north of town. A guy on a motorcycle got hit, and it was not pretty. I was the third one up on the scene. There were already about 15 police there, but I was the third car behind it, and you just see everybody just sitting there twiddling their thumbs, and it's like.
Well, I'm shocked that there wasn't somebody out there trying to record it with their phone and post it on TikTok or something.
Exactly. But you don't see that sense of community anymore. Years ago, you used to hear that it takes a village to raise a child. You don't
It
have that
does.
village anymore. You have
Well,
that
yeah.
small inner family.
So one of the things is I know we've tried to do it somewhat in the past is there's a lot of good drivers out there.
Mhm.
And a lot of good drivers have come and gone from the industry because they had no mentorship.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Someone that they could go to and ask the stupid question, the same stupid question for the 9th time
Mhm.
or whatever. And so, we're all busy anymore. And it's just like, no, do it this way. And, okay. It's one thing I try to really impress on people. And through my years of driving, I've learned a lot of different ways from a lot of different people. But, you know, tell me the mechanics of why I should tie down something. Just don't tell me how to do it.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. And I think TMC does a wonderful job, except for their securement thing. It's not, they don't go over the mechanics of why you need to tie the load down like
Mhm.
this because you don't want the slide or the shifting or what. They just tell you have to.
Right.
No, tell me the mechanics. Why this does it and why this, and that's why when you get back into it, if you have a mentorship or something or somebody who watches over you
Mhm.
makes a big deal. So
Which, touching on that, going back to what Justin said last week, guys, we are looking at bringing in some younger drivers here locally that don't have a lot of experience. And we are looking for those mentors out there. Sean reached out to me. A truck 306 had a clean inspection today. Thank you, Sean. Said that he'd be willing to do that. He's actually certified to be a driver trainer. So any of you guys out there that would help and kind of bring the new era of truck drivers in and give them a little sense of that old school mentality of taking some pride in what they do, reach out to Justin. We'd really like to match up guys that are in this to make it a long haul career versus just popping in and out and making some quick money. And I think it would go a long ways. Even some of you owner operators out there, I know there's not a financial advantage to you to do that, but you guys are some of the best we have out there of doing everything right, and you take pride because it's your business. It would be great that if we could have these guys at least ride with you a day or meet you over at New Mill or wherever it may be and get a little instruction from you.
Well, I think an important thing to say on that is not necessarily younger drivers, but drivers new to the industry, because
Sure,
you're
yeah.
seeing more and more people these days that once they finish their first career, maybe in a factory, they retire after 20 to 25 years. They're still young enough to work, and they look at it as a second career getting into the trucking industry as a driver.
Well, I mean, let's
So-
face it, how many remote jobs since COVID have now gained such popularity that
Right.
people, I mean, this is the original remote job.
Right,
The guys
right.
left the
Yeah,
house and
100%.
that's the way it was.
Yeah.
And for me, I had no idea I would be in transportation, but it's been one of my favorite jobs that I've had, and being able to get out there on the road and not in a completely structured environment.
Mhm.
So one of the things that, as you're talking there, reminds me that this industry is continually evolving and such like that. And to this day, when I get maybe an applicant that comes in, they want me to interview, or I'm talking to somebody who's been working for us, and here's this guy, he knows all the answers and I haven't even asked the question yet. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He's got it all figured out. And he's, oh yeah, well, I know how it is in trucking. And I always look at him and say, so you know how it is in trucking? Well, yeah, I've been driving for 3 years and I know this. And I'm like, well, dude, I've been doing it for 40 years. And I know less about trucking today than I ever have in my whole life. And they kind of give you that dare in the headlight looks like, what are you talking about? Well, no, I mean, trucking has changed so much and it's continuing to change. And it's just like a lot of things in life. You got to look back. Our ancestors, they did a lot of stuff right. Okay.
Mhm.
And that we survived as a society till today. So the same thing with trucking, a mentorship or something would be great with that. So, back to the story about being in trucking there and such, and that some of the other changes, of course, was the logbooks. And everybody, I get these guys that say, oh, but back in the good old days of trucking. Okay, describe the good old days of trucking. well, when you could run as hard as you wanted to and leave whenever you want and go as fast as you wanted to and such. I'm like, yeah, those were good. I said, but what about when you had to go 2 or 3 days or more without a shower, or your truck broke down alongside the road and you had no one to call, and it was in the middle of the night or something like that, or some of the facilities that we had for bathrooms was
a hole in the ground.
well, no, I mean, there's
And
one
our
there
house
was
was a step up.
there's a place up at called Heidi Ho Truck Stop, had the best food. I mean, they'd be probably what is it? The people would shut down because grandma's back there cooking, but she used a lot of butter and lard and such. But anyhow, their men's bathroom was five toilets just in a row on a wall, and there was no wall in between you and the next guy. So when you sat down, it was like, "How you doing?"
Now that's a sense of community.
Yeah.
I definitely had some of that in my time in the military, where you look over, especially in boot camp and basic training, you look over and there's your rack mate sitting next to you, dropping a douche just like you are, and you're like, "How's the weather over there?"
Yeah. So the good old days of trucking wasn't as good as what people allude to. I mean, the thing of logbooks and such. I mean, I bought a truck. I don't mean what year it was now, but thinking like 88, 84. I don't know. Anyhow, bought a truck, put 185,000 miles on that truck myself that year. Okay.
Yeah.
That was I think 75 trips to Florida and 7 California runs. I was just gone all the time and ran hard all the time.
That's some consistent freight.
And oh no, that wasn't consistent freight. It's just
just what you did.
Yeah,
Okay.
you got back. It's like, which way you want to head? You want to go Florida? Okay, well, we'd bang out 2 Floridas in a week. It was no big deal.
Wow.
It's just what you did. But the thing of it was, there was a cost to that.
Yes.
And everyone says, "Oh, logbooks were so," we would sit down and try to figure out our logbooks because it was all screwed up. And if you had trip leases, you had to turn in logs to that company, and you had to other things to match up and such. And if you got pulled over, you spent an hour every day just trying to finagle enough log one that would look good so you could drive again or something like that. Or you'd run we'd run, how was that? We'd leave here, run to Florida, unload, reload, come up to stop our logbook in Walton, Kentucky, but we'd drive up here, unload, reload, go back, and then pick up our logbook again, you would say, in Walton, Kentucky, to be able to make the next turn and such like that. So everyone think, "Oh, those are good days of trucking." And they weren't. You beat yourself to death. You were always tired. Accidents. You'd see them, all the time. Guys just falling asleep,
At the wheel.
at the wheel. And so it's one of those things to where, A, the trucks are a lot safer nowadays. B, if you remember when the ELDs came into play, some of my biggest runners here, okay, and such was, "Oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible. I ain't going to make any money." It's completely turned. You go to them now, it's like, I don't want to go back to paper logs. I'm making more money. I'm getting more rest now than anything. But what that was, and this is what Doug I know harps on a lot. Nobody trip plans anymore.
Right.
Back then we had a trip plan. We had a trip plan for fuel. We had a trip plan for our hours and such like that. And well, I shouldn't say nobody does, but it's not as common as a factor to see people trip plan. What's my trip going to look like and such like it? No matter how long the trip was, if it's here to Cincinnati and back or whatever, people just didn't do that. So when you look at the ELDs, I know you guys out there do a great job. I mean, Doug has got to watch it. We've got to watch it a lot closer. Bring this.
you could not turn in a more impressive performance that these guys have done this year. One log violation for the entire year. And to be truthful, we'll take the hit for that because that was blank logs, not in a permit book that we should have made sure was in there. So as a fleet, they have nothing this year. So I think they've started to appreciate the importance of it, at least understand how it affects us.
You would think the safety manager would take care of that, make sure it's in the truck, wouldn't you, Brian?
Yeah.
You would think, but I handled it for him.
Yeah, okay, good. Somebody needs to. But yeah, that's one of the things about the ELDs that's changed. So if you look back into my days of trucking versus today's, I just see a lot more rested guys.
Well, one of the things that people don't realize is running 2 and 3 and 4 logbooks. Yeah, that's all great for the one person, but if you have one truck swallowing up 4 loads, that's 3 other trucks that didn't get a load, and people don't understand that it's supply and demand out there. With if you have more trucks in an area than there is loads, you have you can't get a good rate coming out of there. But if there's a lot more freight sitting there because people are running legally, that's going to drive the freight rates up, and you'll end up working less and making more in the end. And that's one of the biggest things that have changed. Now, of course, the market goes up and down, as we've known. We've been in a down market until recently, and the last 2 months, all the reports that I'm seeing is, the rates out there are on their way up, freight's moving. But one thing I wanted to get back to, kind of to get away from that, is you had mentioned that Denise came from a very structured family, whereas you were more, I guess you and I had a discussion the other day, as kind of like you just was spontaneous, did on the fly, however that day worked. You didn't know when you woke up that day where you're going to end up that night. At the point where you started having children and things, and Kurt and Ashley and everybody came along, was she pretty well adjusted to how you move and you're in and out? Because I even know today that there's times that you have a schedule in the morning and we have, hey, we're going to talk at this time, and I go back there and you haven't been there for hours, don't know where you're at, and just the plans change. How did she come along and I guess adjust to how the trucking lifestyle is? Because that's all trucking is pure spontaneity at times.
Who says she has? I'm just saying. So no, I mean, it's one of those things that, raising kids back then, you had to do what you had to do. I mean, it was, gosh, I don't know. You might make 16 cents a mile. No, that's probably not it. Maybe 11 cents a mile or something like that. So the only way you made money is to keep the wheels running, and you had to do that. To tell you the truth, I was in trucking. We got married. I had a couple kids, actually got out of trucking for a time. She says, can you just, go back farming or whatever and such. So I did that. Once you've made decent money, it's hard to go backwards. And so that worked for a little bit. And I'm like, this ain't going to work. She says it's not going to work. So that was one of the best things we did, actually, was I got into trucking, got out of it, and it was her idea to get back into it. And then I had way more support and such like that to do it. It's just one of those things that you, the biggest thing that I try to help people today, raising kids and in trucking, you've got it really nice. I see a truck pull in here Friday afternoon at 4:00, let's say. The guy fills up with fuel, backs into his position back there, sets the brake, cleans the trash can out, and loads up his stuff and goes home. He shows up Monday morning. His truck's been washed. He's ready to go. And I want a guy to be able to leave here. That's one of the main goals. And that's why we still work a shop here on Saturdays. A lot of trucking companies don't anymore. It used to be Saturday shop days were all day long, and it was 9:30 at night till we got out of here and such. But just a lot of people don't do Saturdays now. But what I really want the guy to be able to do is to come into the yard, get things ready for next week, go home, leave everything about trucking here. Saturday, go do whatever you do on Saturday, Sunday. You go to church. You go out to eat or whatever and stuff like that. That way, Saturday or Sunday afternoon or Monday morning, you get in your truck. You're ready to go. The truck's ready to go. The guy's rested and such.
Right.
And that's one of the things I really want to impress on people is that's why, we get these truck drivers that come in and say, hey, I want to run, 3,000 miles a week and be out for 4 weeks at a time and then home for 4 days or whatever. That's just not what we do.
Right.
And I think the reason that is because I know what it is to raise kids and being in trucking. And so I want to set an atmosphere up to where you're family focused and such like that, because before you know it, the kids are gone and out of the house and then it is you and your wife, and then maybe you do want to go out and drive more. I don't know, but just one of those things as you look. So Denise has got to get used to it. It's actually, Doug, to tell you the truth, it's been more of a difficult thing to be in the office than it has been out on the road for our relationship and such like that, because not so much now, but earlier in my career, I was at the office all the time. 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning till working on trucks at whatever time they came in, and you get home at 1, 2 in the morning. You get two or three phone calls, guys, because guys broke down during the night, or every time you went on vacation, you were on the phone the whole time with a problem. So actually driving truck, that's why you guys laugh at me that I enjoy going out and driving truck. Man, that's my happy place, if you want to say. Turn my phone off and let it sit there, and I don't even turn the radio on. I just drive.
Peace and quiet.
That's exactly what it is. So yeah, I'm going to say it's definitely harder being in the office and such, because you're always accessible at that point.
Yep.
So.
True. So, all right, we're getting past that point. Now you're out trucking. Denise has came along. You met Denise. You're starting to have children. I know that you progressed in some other businesses there. How many trucks was there when you guys were just hauling seed for your dad? Did you guys grow to more than a couple, or how did that evolve into, I guess, the next stage of things as you went along?
Of course, everything you planned went the opposite way. But when we started driving, it was just me and my brother Steve.
Okay.
And then we moved along, and we gained some other trucks. We were home for Dietrich Industries out of Hicksville. I had a guy that I went to school with over there that wanted to learn how to drive truck. We threw him into the truck, taught him in 24 hours. And put him in a truck, and that would be Caleb Holtzberry's dad, Jeffro. Okay, so we just continue to kind of build along the way with that. Along the way there.
So back then you didn't have to have a chauffeur or nothing. You could just.
Well, yeah, you had to get the license.
Oh, okay. That came later.
That was no. You didn't have to go to a formal truck driving school.
Sure.
Or such like that. When they brought out the CDLs, me and my dad went down to Van Wert, not the CDLs. Yeah, I guess the CDL. When they brought those out, me and my dad went down to do the test, and I failed. He failed. And I think Jeff Holtzberry was with us at that time too. But anyhow, a bunch of us failed, and the instructor said, did you guys read the book at all? No, we don't. Nobody needs to read the book. He's like, you have to answer the questions the way the lawyers write them.
Yeah.
So that day I walked out, Brian, and I could drive a triple tanker. Is what I could drive.
A triple tanker.
Nice.
Okay. I don't know how I passed that, but that's all I could do. Okay. And actually, my dad, who'd been driving since the 50s, he had to go and get tested. I think he failed a total of 10 times before he finally did it. And he's like, he told the guy, he says, I forgot more than you'll ever know about trucking.
Right.
So, it's just what it was. So,
They
yeah. So
probably didn't have med cards in that back then, did they?
you did have
You
to
did?
have a
Okay.
med
I did
card
not realize
and
that.
such like that, and that, um, you know,
What was that doctor's appointment
yeah,
like?
well,
Turn your head and talk.
yeah. Well, you could get a physical done at most any truck stop.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Well, they had them for quite a while. You can get them. I mean, I think that it was 2008. 2008, I had to do that. I did not take care of it. I was at a truck stop in New Jersey. They had a doctor's office in the middle of a lot. You paid $100. You walked out with a physical.
Yeah, regardless of what your health was.
Yeah, that's pretty much the truth of it too.
Exactly. So yeah, we just kind of started like that, and kind of even pre that of going over to Dietrich's, we started a company called Custom Assembly, and we were hauling motorcycles for some relation that had dealerships, and we started hauling those out of Chicago. We'd load steel in the front and motorcycles in the middle, and haul them out of Chicago back here. Started that company, and then sold that company off maybe 8 or 10 years later. It got to the point it was so busy that we had to make a decision: are we going to be in trucking, or are we going to be in the assembly part? And such like that. So they're doing great. The Keezers who bought that are doing great. Glad to hear that and such.
I guess I got that in the wrong order. Sorry. I thought
Okay.
I thought the seed came first.
No. So then, we just kind of started out slow like that, and there got to be a point where.
Well, I mean, if I can interrupt you just real quick, since I did get that out of order, where did you see the hole around here in the market to where hey, we're going to assemble ATVs, motorcycles, so on and so forth? I mean, it just seems like a very random, niche business to come across. Very niche.
Well, like I said, I had a Van Wert Honda down there. Was owned by Harvey and Clark Stoller. They're second cousins and such. And they're like, man, we just can't get our motorcycles out of Chicago back. And so they said, anyway, you can pick them up. Well, okay, we'd load steel out of Inland Plant 1, Door 6, where we loaded steel out of a lot, and we'd load the steel, run up into Chicago, go pick up 4, 5, 6 motorcycles, whatever, put them on the flatbed trailer, come back and drop them off. Well, a friend of his over in Cridersville, Ohio, had a dealership, heard about us doing it, and then Defiance, and then Worcester, and then all these places.
Just built from there.
It just started building from that. And then Honda came to us and said, hey, is there any way you guys could, we got this concept that we're thinking, hey, if everyone could haul these smaller dealerships didn't have room for a semi to get around in and such. And so it was tough for us to deliver sometimes. They said, boy, if we could just haul them into one central location, and store them and just get them when we need them, because they didn't need this motorcycle or whatever at a certain time.
Right.
And so then they, on the same thing, well, if we could just assemble them, so you roll them off the truck and right into the showroom, showroom ready and such. So we started doing that and as well, and it just continued to grow over time.
And is that still down in the original location? Is that where you guys started it at? Or
no, actually, we started at the seed store that my dad owned up in Van Wert.
Okay,
because that business had kind of diminished, and then we started this up in that seed store.
And I'm assuming it grew to a point where you had to find a larger facility.
We had sold it at that point.
Okay.
And then, like I said, the Keezers have taken it from there and such and grown it to what it is today. So it's very, very nice.
Wow.
We actually started back in the day. We used to haul, just me and my brother hauled for Arctic Cat snowmobiles out of Minnesota. And we handled everything east of of Illinois. So we'd run out of Minnesota up into the Northeast and such like that with flatbeds, and we rigged up a way to unload these snowmobiles off of our flatbed trailers, because a lot of these dealerships didn't have forklifts back then.
Right.
So we had a winch system that we could pick them up and swing them over and let them down. So it was just, one of those fun things that you got to do, experimenting through it. So,
Yeah.
if you look back over my career, a lot of it was on the doing something odd and unusual. And that leads you into the reason, kind of the way I ended up having to get out of the truck for a while was because we used to haul a lot of live honeybees. We used to haul, um, out of Florida, come up into New York, upper state New York, Ohio here, Wisconsin, bees out of Florida. They would go down there and leave them in the wintertime. You'd haul them back up here, vice versa. We hauled a lot of bees over the years. We probably had 35 trucks running. I was still driving at the time. And anyhow, there was only a few of us that hauled the bees, though. And one of the things was, because you would leave Florida in the morning and drive straight through.
I was going to say, how would you stop? I mean,
Up here, you couldn't.
Yeah.
You couldn't stop. If you came up to a road, or the road was closed down because of an accident, we had permission to throw our four-ways on and hit the berm and keep moving. But a lot of times you would get up to the next exit and get off just to keep moving. You had to keep the bees moving and such like that. And there's a lot of stories about bees I can go into. But anyhow, one of the things was I was down loading bees down in Florida, and I got stung. Well, I get stung a lot. It was no big deal. Well, loaded, went to bed, woke up the next morning, started trucking for back here, got up to about Knoxville, Tennessee, and I knew something was wrong. My leg was starting to swell up. Okay. By the time I got to the house, a couple guys were there that helped me get out of the truck, and they took the load of bees on up to deliver it up into Michigan. I went to the hospital and found out that I got bit by a scorpion. Okay, on my leg, and
Wow.
I had cellulitis. So I had to put my leg had to be elevated for, I think, 2 months or something like that. Well, I'm not sure who all drove my truck at the time or whatnot, but I started dispatching at the time. And before that, my wife was doing some dispatching for us, and my brother Steve, and we had other dispatchers, but I moved into it. And that's really kind of where I then transitioned out of the truck into dispatching.
So I think that brings us up to a pretty good point. We're hitting about the hour mark right here. It's kind of where we wanted to stop, and we want to save this for another episode. Anybody out there that has any questions, go ahead, throw your hands up. I know there's not a whole lot for a Q&A here. I do want to thank you, Rick, for joining us in here. I know that you were trying to get me to do something different beforehand and get out of it. I think that it is important for everyone to hear kind of where it came from and how we got to this point. I think it helps make people appreciate how hard that you worked. But I have one last question. I listen to a lot of NPR podcasts, and one of them that I really enjoy is when business owners of huge companies come along and they have a conversation of how the company got started. And one of the things that they say is that they couldn't have done it without at least some aspect of luck being in there. How much do you believe that along the way of all this stuff lining up, do you believe it was a little bit of luck that puts you in a position to keep making that step forward and advance this all the way up till, of course, Logisticize and everything that came along the way?
Do you think getting bit by a scorpion's lucky?
I don't. That got him out of the truck. Now wait a minute. That got him out of the truck and got him into the next. Yeah, the next portion of it.
It may not be good luck, but it's something luck, right?
So no, I understand your question there, Doug, and it's definitely not by skill that I am where I am. I ask God quite a bit. Okay, why am I in this position and such? I enjoy the position now just because of the people I get to talk to. I'm not as hurried as I usually am. That I can, if I see somebody, I can spend a couple minutes with them or something like that. But it was a lot of hard work by my wife, my family, and by the grace of God to do this. And good old fashioned luck does play along the way. A good, the main thing is you do a good job and some people recognize it, and they will be willing to pay for that service again. And that's really where, you can say, oh, you're lucky to have a customer like whoever. Okay. Well, you know what? There's a lot of times we had to move trailers over there at 2:30 in the morning, or we had to go get a truck somewhere to make the load deliver and such like that. So we're giving them a service they need. It's not just luck. It's a lot of work behind the luck, and it takes more than just me as well. And that's so good people
Yes.
would be part of it.
Mhm.
So.
And I think that's one of the things that our customers do appreciate. It's not just a piece of paper that has people's signatures at the bottom. That's a contract. It's a handshake, and knowing that they have more than just a carrier behind them. They actually have a whole network here of all of us that care. The drivers, most every one of them out there, take pride in what they do, and we really don't have a lot of issues with getting their freight delivered for them. And that's one of the things I wanted to touch on. You guys handle the elite freight out of New Mill. You guys do run 120-foot loads out there. SDI, they call on us to do prototype loads. Mark Copawoda has been way out west, and we've done a lot of stuff for them. So that it really is a tribute to you guys out there in the trucks. They trust us. They trust what you guys do. You guys keep it clean out there. Continue to do what you're doing. We're going to go ahead and get done and wrap this up. I want to thank you, Rick, for joining us for part one.
It's great.
Brian's in here. I know you didn't get to say a whole lot today, but
I learned a lot today.
Yeah, so did I.
So
I actually did as well.
I
Right.
enjoyed my time in here with Rick today, and Doug, thanks again for having me on each week. And
I wish people would have called in, though. I got all these,
I mean, you think one of them, even Ackerman, would call in and give you some.
See, I see him typing
something,
down there.
I think Mike's busy driving right now, and his cell service might not be great going.
I
back
hope
and
he's
forth.
not typing. So,
Well,
No,
this gives
sounds
everybody,
good.
this will give everybody a chance to come up with some questions. You guys have a great weekend out there. We appreciate you joining us once again. Hope you guys get home safe to your families, and we look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks a lot, guys.
Down at the new Millennium Gates, where the heavy iron weights, the dawn breaks cold against the diesel brakes. You're cinching down the chains on a skeleton of steel, feeling every pound through the steering wheel. Copper cords going like a copperhead snake, tied to the flatbed with no room for a mistake. It's a wide, low gamble on a narrow strip road, carrying the weight of a monumental load. This is for the kings of the outside lane, the ones who conquer the mountain and the rain. The Logisticize 104 is calling out your name, for the grit in your teeth and the pride in the frame, moving the bones of the cities yet to rise, with the highway burning in your steady eye. Oh, it ain't just cargo bolted to a trailer floor. Oh, it's a pulse of the country knocking in at the door. Oh, they see an oversized sign and they pull to the side, but they don't know the mastery deep in the ride. From the trust to the corner to the long haul climb, you're punching the clock against the hammer of time. The asphalt's a teacher and the lessons are hard, measuring the inches in a gravel strewn yard. You navigate the turns where the weed carts fail, leaving a silver streak on a lonesome trail. New millenniums pass with their hands on the gear, filtering the static till the mission is clear. No room for the timid when the tonnage gets high, just the roar of the engine under a wide open sky. This is for the kings of the